Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Hobby News Daily. I'm still Danny Black, but today I am joined by the hobby lawyer, the man that everybody knows for many, many cases and many years, Jeffrey Lichtman. Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. Let me start out with the first question because I think I'm getting old. How many years has it been since the Mastro case?
Wow. I would I would say about beginning or end because it was sort of a long play. I would say about 12 years or so.
It's,
It's been since it ended and has been put to bed, but it started, many years before.
I feel like it was almost yesterday. And as I'm prepping for the interview, I'm seeing some of these dates, and I'm thinking either I'm getting old or there's a typo in the article. It turns out I'm getting old. Um, can you talk about your practice before that case as a defense attorney and what a typical defense attorney does?
Well, I mean, by the time that Mastro reared its ugly head, I was already an established criminal defense lawyer. I represented John Gotti Jr. successfully at trial. I had a number of other big wins that weren't as high profile, I suppose, as Gotti. So when I came into the Mastro situation, I was somewhat, I wouldn't say new to the hobby because I've been collecting since I'm 4 years old, probably, but I was new to perhaps noticing fraud in the hobby. And it didn't take long, frankly, just by bidding in Mastro auctions where anybody with half a brain could tell that I was being, they were being shill bid over. It was sort of obvious with the patterns. And, I wouldn't say that my training as a defense lawyer allowed me to see the fraud. Maybe it did. I think it was just common sense. There'd be lots that hadn't been bid on for weeks, and you'd put a bid in, and then 45 seconds later, every one of your bids in every different category, boxing, baseball, football, vintage, modern, all of a sudden they were all consecutively bid over. And I remember bringing it up publicly on I think it was Net 54 the first time, and the outrage. How dare could you, attack our sacred cow? We love Mastro. We commit fraud with Mastro. We get paid by Mastro to say good things. And they have beautiful orange tape on their packages. Well, I was shocked at the response. I expected it to be, I was going to be hailed as a returning hero because I was going to help people save money from the fraud that they were being perpetrated upon by the evil Mastro Empire. Very few people agreed with me or supported me. And I learned from that moment that when people talk about things publicly, their position, their opinion is usually colored by who's paying them or who they can, make some money off of. It's never based on an honest take of the scenario. So I remember getting very little support and then getting a message from an FBI agent who said to me, well, I'm investigating Mastro, and everything you said is correct. And he ended up becoming a fast friend to this day, Brian
Wow.
Verstokes.
Do you mind me asking? That's crazy. Is it just, did that fall under just FBI fraud and they saw what you were doing?
Well, they were already investigating
Oh, they
Mastro
were.
for other things. And, look, it's fraud is fraud. Just because it's baseball cards doesn't mean that it can't be a lot of money lost to people that are buying the cards. So it's not an easy sell, I suppose, to the government. And we've certainly seen some reticence over the years to prosecuting these cases. But you had a very determined, very dogged, very smart agent in Brian who refused to let it go. And that's really what he did. Look, back then, you have to remember that the people at Mastro and all the auction houses, they weren't concerned about somebody getting their, bidding records or their computer records. It was really before that sort of thing was even thought about that could be done. So you had guys at Mastro that would just walk in, that were working for Mastro, and they would just bang any lot they wanted to drive up the price. They'd find out, they knew what the ceiling bids were. How would anybody be able to find out? It was a different era. So that's why it was so easy to prosecute them because their fingerprints were all over the fraud.
I'm a big believer that many trimmed cards are out in the market, graded, slabbed, because through the late 70s and 80s. It was just so prevalent. I'm from Baltimore. There's one card shop that was open for years that was famous, in the back room, for trimming. And if that's one shop in Baltimore, how many were around the country? So you, as a defense attorney, typically are defending somebody like a John Gotti Jr., which, by the way, was that crazy, or the first time you met him, was that intimidating, or?
I had actually met him in about 1997 when he had gotten arrested on a federal RICO case in Westchester. My boss at the time was representing him, and I got to know John well. He was actually, that was the second time. The first time I met him when his father was convicted, and I wrote part of the appeal. And I met John, and that was intimidating. He was scary. It was probably 1991 or 1992. The next time I saw him was in 1997 when he had gotten arrested, and he was a completely different guy. He was a pleasure, a lovely guy. And then I started representing him again after he did some time in that case, and he was at the end of his jail sentence. I was asked by his sister to go visit him in prison in Raybrook, and I had become very friendly with him at the time due to my boss representing him on that other case. And he wanted me to represent him, and he was a pleasure. And that was back in 2003. John Gotti Jr. was the only client of mine that was at my kid's bar mitzvah. My kids were born right about the time that he got indicted on the case that I handled for him. And, we've been very close since then.
My twin boys had their bar mitzvah last Saturday.
Oh, is that right? Congratulations.
Thank you. So, funny timing. We did not have any of the Gottis at the bar mitzvah.
I'm sorry, it was your loss.
Yes, that's a crazy story. I'm sorry, I just got sidetracked. You casually threw in the Gotti Jr., and I knew you had done it, but I that's crazy. So moving forward from Mastro, you actually took what side on that case? You did not defend Bill Mastro.
No, hell no. I would never. I'd rather represent a child molester than represent Bill Mastro, because he was a thief that stole from his friends, and he used religion as a shield. I mean, it was disgusting. It was, as a defense lawyer, I've seen everything. I'm telling you, I'd rather represent a child molester than Bill Mastro or Doug Allen. They were disgusting. This was the hobby that I loved. You have to understand, for the reasons I felt that way. Not just because I'm an obnoxious asshole. This was something that gave me some peace in my life, baseball cards. And collecting was sacred to me. And then I have to find out that, one of the leading auctioneers is a thief. So that I took that personally. So when the opportunity came, when subpoenas were going out, when Brian was sending those subpoenas out, people came to me, and I happily represented them and happily helped put Bill Mastro in jail. I think he got 20 months. I should have gotten a lot more. Doug Allen got more because they both cooperated, of course, because that's what the cowards would do when they get caught. They want to figure out anything they can do to get out of the mess they're in. And Doug ended up helping John Rogers avoid, or at least clean up before an FBI raid the next day. The FBI found out about it, and then, Doug Allen ended up getting more jail time. But that was one of the rare times. I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not looking to put people in jail. But when you're fucking with my basebal cards, I'm going to look to put you in jail. So
was that a different perspective for you? Did you have to take a different mindset? And how willing were people to testify and come forward? I thought I read that at some point you had to try to nudge some people forward.
Well, some people, everybody was scared, obviously, because a lot of people had exposure. But when you get a grand jury subpoena, your choice is to go in there and testify truthfully. You can take the Fifth Amendment if you have some criminal exposure, or you can refuse to testify, and you can go to jail for contempt. So everybody wanted to help, but some people needed some protection, which was gotten for my clients that I represented, so they wouldn't have any exposure criminally. But there were a lot of people, you can imagine, in our hobby that didn't want to pay for a lawyer because, God forbid you pay for anything. They'll steal every dollar out of your pocket. But if they need to hire a lawyer, I'd rather go to jail than pay for a lawyer. And that's what happened. If you read the indictment, you can see that, there were unindicted co-conspirators. Everybody testified in the grand jury. A lot of people didn't want anybody to know that they testified, but anybody that was targeted testified, and it was really not much of a defense that they could put up. In terms of me putting on a different hat, you know, I don't think so. It didn't really require much of a difference for me, because I'm going to fight. You just wind me up and put me, point me in a direction, and I'm going to tear your face off if I can. And that's really what I felt like. And I felt personally aggrieved by what they did. And then I also felt personally aggrieved by all the people that were getting either paid by Mastro or were conspiring with Mastro, knowing that the shill bidding was going on, shit talking me. So, all they ended up doing was made me more ferocious about it. It was a pleasure. And I also, got to work with Brian, who, as I said, has become a close friend. And I can tell you that in 34 years of practice now, the number of FBI agents or federal prosecutors that I've ever socialized with, thousands, by the way, it's been over the years, two. One of them was Brian, and the other one was the Gotti prosecutor. After the case was over, a few weeks later, he asked me out for a drink just to ask me, how I did what I did, and it was sort of my mindset about it. And he was a wonderful guy, and we fought like crazy during the trial, but I always respected him, and it became, he was a friend. He became a friend.
Yeah, as a side note, I think in intelligent people find intelligent people, and it's always fun to pick their brain, which is why I do this interview series. Moving forward, because I want to get all the good stuff in, and I don't know how much you can talk about it, but you went back to the defense side with PWCC. How much can you comment on that? Because that's a lot more recent.
Well, I mean, look, I don't think it was any secret that my position on PWCC, I was a harsh critic of Brent and PWCC when I believed they were committing fraud. They became targeted by the FBI. And at that point, I felt that in order for them to get a more favorable disposition of their situation, I felt that they should take in all of the cards that were either altered in some way or another and give refunds, which they did. And I think that went a long way towards helping their situation. They accepted responsibility. They made people whole. Not everybody, that's for sure. I suppose not everybody. And not everybody wanted to be made whole, because a lot of people had trimmed cards and, PSA holders and high grades. And they figured, why should I get back the price that I paid for this thing? Now it's gone up in value so much. I mean, look, this is the hobby. Everybody's against fraud except when it can make you money. This is an interesting mess of people in the hobby. Bless their hearts, because I suppose I'm one of them.
Hey, I've been charged for a penny sleeve by a dealer, so yes, they will make money on anything they can.
Exactly.
All right, cards. I know you're a huge collector. Getting started, where did you grow up, and who were your players? Who were your guys?
I grew up in New Jersey. My father was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. He was from Brooklyn, so I was a Dodgers fan. There you go, growing up. And I suppose my favorite players as a kid was Steve Garvey. That whole infield, Ron Say, Davey Lopes, Bill Russell, Dusty Baker in the outfield, Ron Monday, Reggie Smith, Steve Yeager, Joe Ferguson behind the plate, Mike Scioscia eventually. So I was a Dodgers fan growing up. That did not really influence my collecting as I became an adult, because in terms of vintage time, other than Jackie Robinson and maybe Gil Hodges, I collect to some extent, and Roy Campanella. Largely, I'm a Ty Cobb fan, Hal Chase fan, a Yankee, actually a Highlander back then before they were the Yankees. And he was a criminal, so naturally I was attracted to him. But I would say that Ty Cobb, and I'm now collecting Babe Ruth a lot lately, the last couple of years as well.
Favorite Babe Ruth card you've ever owned?
I would say probably the Mendelssohn, which is the first card that features him as a Yankee, even though he was in his Red Sox uniform. I have the highest graded Babe Ruth Mendelssohn card from 1917 to 20. That's probably my favorite. I've also got some exhibits that I love. They're just wonderful pictures of him. Babe Ruth, I like collecting him. I should have collected him years ago, but I was so enthralled with Ty Cobb. I don't think I can really compare my love for the Ruth cards as I can the Chase and Cobb cards, but I still like Ruth. Getting a Ruth card is exciting. Joe Jackson I collect now as well, and I find that exciting as well.
So you like anybody with a bad on the shoulder, off the shoulder?
And somebody who committed some crimes while they were playing, like Joe Jackson as well, though ostensibly he didn't, and he was innocent.
In all seriousness, Paul Lesko collects cards that have been involved in lawsuits. And I think that's a great way to PC for an attorney. Do you actually enjoy collecting cards of guys that have been involved in lawsuits or criminal activity?
I like the criminal nature, which is why I became attracted to Hal Chase, who's not really a household name outside of the hobby.
What's his story?
He was one of the early Highlanders and was accused of throwing games and was kicked out of baseball at some point. He was really a bad egg, I suppose. And he was, again, a Yankee before they were the Yankees. And he was a wonderful first baseman, great fielder, good hitter. And I think Babe Ruth even said that he was better than Lou Gehrig at one point. Had he not gotten kicked out of baseball, he would be a Hall of Famer, no question. He received higher votes the first year they did the voting than I think dozens of Hall of Famers that eventually got in. But he obviously petered out once everything was revealed about what he was involved in. But I love collecting them. I think I've got I know I do have the most significant Hal Chase collection on the planet because I'm one of only a handful of idiots that actually collect him. So that does help.
I was wondering if the auctions were the same couple guys every time.
It seems that way. We talk before and after, but I like to help. Anybody that collects Hal Chase knows that I'm very generous with getting rid of Hal Chase cards. If you're a Chase collector, I can think of one fellow in particular who I like to help any way that I can because, look, I'm not going to be around forever. So if somebody younger than me, I've got a Hal Chase game-used bat that's over there. I'd show you, but it's amongst many guns and bullets. But there is a Hal Chase bat over there in a beautiful case, and I've told my friend that when it's time to get rid of it, he can have it for what I paid for it years ago because I wanted to go to the right place.
Game used bats that old are one of my favorite things. If I get into a place in life where I can grow my collection, I'll say Marshall Fogel inspired me on the bats a little bit.
That's the collection.
I mean, not a bad collection for him either. So moving forward, where do you see your collection going? I mean, it's Ruth, obviously Hal Chase, but are you going to evolve out of that? Are you staying with the small haul guys?
I'm going to probably start selling off all the stuff that isn't really part of my main collection because it's too big, it's too unwieldy, and it's going to take 10 years to sell it all at an auction. There's constant curveballs that get thrown in this hobby if you're a hobbyist. And you always sort of have to be on top of everything if you want to be intelligent about your collection. I mean, do you want to talk about the SGC purchase by collectors? I mean, I'm happy to speak about it.
I would love your thoughts on that.
And the reason I'm saying is that it depends on your collection. I'm an SGC guy largely, mainly because I like the holder. I like the whole process better. Dave Foreman is a close friend of mine, and I represented him for years. But I also have a ton of PSA cards. Every registry, set that I have is PSA. Mainly because SGC doesn't have a registry. That's really, although I actually do have some SGC registry sets. I don't know if the registry can be had anymore. I have the 1910 Brush Detroit Tigers set in the SGC registry that's complete. I'm sure I'm the only one that did that. My view on it, and so the reason I'm saying is that you have to concern yourself with what do you do with SGC cards going forward. And, I have a lot of faith in Dave because I saw him from the background when SGC was pursued during the pandemic for a takeover, for a purchase. And, Dave is a strange guy. Everybody assumes that money, that's all he wants, like everybody else in the hobby. But sure. I'm telling you that he was mortified at the prospect of selling and what he believed was leaving SGC customers who have all their cards, sort of left adrift and not have, and maybe losing value of their cards. And it was something that really, made him, and I know people aren't going to believe this, but it made the guy physically sick. So now that it's been purchased by collectors, I think collectors is a different place now that you've got Nat in charge. He is obviously very successful in other areas that he's gone into before he entered this sector. But anybody that I don't know him personally at all, but I've heard a lot about him, and I peruse his Instagram account, and he is a legitimate mental patient collector. And I say that as positive because
I was about to say that's a huge compliment in our hobby.
This is what we are. He's a collector to a degree that I really say that it borders on like a genetic disorder. In order to collect like this and be such a hoarder and be so anal retentive about every card you get, and you're scanning them and you're categorizing them. This is what I did as a kid when I was 5 years old. I did this kind of stuff. I'm 58 now, and I'm still doing it. And you can see that he's the same way. So that gives me a little bit of hope, because it's not like this is some kind of cold-blooded, ruthless purchase, which is what all the naysayers want it to be. I think SGC operates in a different position in the hobby, and there's a lot of overlap, surely. But as I said, there are tons of things that I use PSA for, because SGC just doesn't make any sense. Why? Because if I have a great 1958 mantle card, I'm not going to send it into SGC, because it's going to not do as well on resale as PSA does because of the registry. So only an idiot. And I'm close with the SGC guys, but they would surely tell me the same thing. And I can remember there was a Steph Curry rookie card that somebody asked me to help get graded and sold. And I called Dave up, and he said to me, "You can't have that graded by SGC. It's got to get graded by, Beckett or PSA, because they handle modern basketball better." Everybody knows. So I think that you try to see a situation for SGC. I think Nat can probably see that these two companies can coexist, but SGC needs help to become better. They're never going to get the registry cards that PSA gets. And I think he sees that if he simply swallows up SGC and eliminates it, you're going to have a lot of people that are sending in to SGC that are customers, that are fanatics for SGC. They're going to say, well, I'm not going to go to PSA. They're the enemy. And they're going to look for another way to get their cards graded. So he's not stupid. Just because he's a collecting fool like the rest of us doesn't mean that he's intellectually stupid. And I believe Dave, and I believe Peter Steinberg, who runs the day-to-day operations of SGC. Peter is the top guy in the hobby. If I owned a grading company, the first person I would hire would be Peter. I mean, he's wildly competent.
For two reasons. I'll tell you the two reasons: his intelligence and his boyish good looks.
Well, it's because he's enthusiastic and it's real.
It's great. He does his videos, and I'm like, oh, if I could be half as good looking and half as affable as he is.
He's very affable. And he's really a good guy. And he gets abused. There are so many haters in this hobby. He gets abused so much, but he's always positive. And he's really a decent guy. He's really smart. So what are they going to do? They're going to have, Dave is going to sell the company. What? So he can screw Peter, who's been the most loyal person ever to him? It just doesn't make sense. And look, again, this hobby is filled with so many haters, and I really get it, because I'm a hater too. But look to see where the comments are coming from. It's always either a jealousy motive. You got people that just can't imagine that Dave Foreman had a big score. How can it be that Dave Foreman has a big score and I'm just some stupid asshole that has nothing? I have to tell you, there's a reason. He's smarter than you. And that's really the reason. He could have sold years ago. He could have gotten rid. He waited, and now it worked out for him. And I couldn't be happier for the guy, because I consider him like a brother. He's another one of my brothers who did well. I'm happy for him. He's difficult sometimes, but he was an easy guy to represent, and he's a better friend. I'd say that.
Well, I won't make you comment if you're uncomfortable, but I know for a fact that going back a couple of years, another grading company was making a move to try to buy SGC, and that did not happen. So I think, to your point, he was waiting for the right situation, um, both from a company standpoint and make sure the due diligence and everything, would leave the company in the right place. I talked to Nat Turner last week. He was emphatic that they're staying as separate companies for the foreseeable future. Now,
look, you can't guarantee it's going to be forever because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. But look, this is a sector that is consolidating. So if you have a choice to sell, you have a chance to sell. If you don't sell, you may end up being left by the wayside and you'll shrink into oblivion. There's Fanatics is out there. They bought PWCC. Incredibly, shockingly.
Yep.
Again, shockingly, that was their first choice. Whoever's in charge there, God bless them. You've got more brains than money, clearly. Excuse me. Reverse.
I was about to say more money
than brains. See, clearly, I have less brains than money. But I think that there had to be a choice when the right opportunity came along. And again, I've been talking to Dave about this for years. This goes back to 2020. I believe. So it's 2024. It's a new day. I'll say to the people out there that just can't bear the thought of the fact that these two companies, PSA and SGC, are under the same umbrella. Here's your choice. If you don't like it, submit to, I don't know, GAI or what is it? CGC, SCS. What are the letters now?
CGC.
Oh, I know that changes every few months. They may be a wonderful company.
Yeah.
They may be run by wonderful people. But
Yep.
I'll say this. If you put a card in there that's an expensive card, everybody's going to assume that it's either trimmed or that you have some kind of deep level of brain damage because the card is going to be worth less than if it's in an SGC or PSA holder. It's just the fact. I have a card that SGC doesn't grade. I'm going to send it into, what is it, CGC you said?
Yep.
GCC, whatever.
CGC.
I'm going to send it into them because I want it to be slabbed and protected. And I send stuff to PSA. I've got right now orders into SGC. Peter, please, if you're watching this, if you can get a move on it, I appreciate it.
Their turnaround times have gone a little long.
Because they've gotten busier.
Yeah.
But to submit to a company that may be good in 15 years and may not exist, look, you got to be out of your mind. What I would say to the people doing it is go ahead. You may want to get your card slabbed by these, new companies, but I can bet you're not going to sell it in that slab for many, many years because you know that if you sell it now, you're going to get slaughtered. And again, as I said, it may be that they're a great company, but this is just how the hobby is. Everybody wants to get the maximum for what their cards are worth. That's just how it is.
Well, and human nature is nobody likes change. So there's an aspect of that. No matter what company bought what company, there would be people screaming. So I'm a big believer in the hobby. It's just a megaphone of humanity.
True.
So, all right. I promised you a lot less time than we went. You are an easy conversation, and I thank you, and I feel bad that I took up this much time.
It's totally fine. I'm going to go work out now. So you didn't offend me at all or take up too much time. You actually had another 15 minutes, but you blew it now. But thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Dan. You do a great job with the podcast. I've listened to them, and they're wonderful because you really understand the hobby and you see things objectively. And I think that's crucial for what you do.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me. It really does. As I'm bootstrapping Hobby News Daily, and we're trying to grow from the ground up. It means a lot. So thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
All right. To everybody else, see you on the next episode and appreciate you watching. Take care.